Greetings and welcome to another edition of allhorsetalk.com. I'm your host, Alita Bunny Hendricks, and today's basic horsemanship skill that we're going to address is tacking up your horse. Correct order and some helpful hints on how to make your tack fitting easier. First thing I start off with is a scrupulously clean horse, completely clean, especially under the saddle area and at the girth area and under the belly, and any other place that the bridle will touch as well, because I don't want to create any sores or irritation that's going to hurt him. I start with my saddle pad. And I begin with my saddle pad in the middle, find the spine, line the spine of the saddle pad with the spine of the horse. And notice that it's much further forward than I'm going to want this saddle to fit. That's fine. I'll show you why in a moment. Okay. With the pad in the slightly forward position, I'm going to then put the saddle on gently. Make sure the flaps are flat. On both sides. And then I'm going to slide both back to the appropriate position. Okay. Now, appropriate position means it's not so far back on the horse that it's over his loins, and that it's not so far forward that his scapula is being cut off by the flap. So this is about right. Next, I'm going to make sure that I lift up my saddle pad under the pommel of the saddle because I want some airflow in here. I also want to be sure that once the pressure of my body sitting down on the saddle doesn't press the pad onto his spine. Okay. This pad is just a little bit short for my flap. It does have a lovely piece of webbing that the girth can go through, but my saddle flap is a little bit long for this. So I'm going to use the strap, the billet strap that's provided. I can put it over the first billet or the first and second billet or all three billets, depending on which positioning I need to hold this pad firmly. I'm just going to go over the first billet. Now I'll do the other side. Now for the girth. I remove the girth. And again, I do start also with tack that's very, very clean so that that doesn't cause any rubs. And this girth has elastic on one end, this end, not on this end. So the non-elastic end is the side that's going to go onto the right side, because when I shorten my girth, if I'm tacked up and sitting up on his back, I want to do that with my left, on the left side, and this side is the elastic side, which will make that job easier. So I'm going to put the non-elastic side on the right billet. Okay, now I bring the girth underneath. I'm going to find the billets. Now, I always want to attach my girth to the front billet. Traditionally, the front billet is the one billet that has the webbing that reaches all the way over the tree of the saddle. That's the most secure billet. The other billets, the webbing attaches up into the tree here, but it does not go all the way over as a solid piece. So I'm always going to use the first billet. And when I first girth up a horse, I'm going to start loose. I don't want to create any kind of flinching or any reaction from him. I'm going to start loose. And as the horse relaxes, as I go about the rest of my tacking up process, I'm going to then just close that girth up one hole at a time. Okay, now the next choice is first billet. Do I want first and second or first and third? Depends on a couple of things. Depends on perhaps the width of your buckles. Okay, these buckles are a good enough width that I could use billets 1 and 2. And it also can depend on which set of billets is going to give you the most even and stable pressure on your horse's back. So I'm going to choose the first and third billets for that process. Okay, now remember, I'm going to keep it loose for right now. If the leather is nice and supple, sometimes the stirrups tend to want to spontaneously fall down, so I can use a couple of ways of keeping them up. Okay. Okay, so he's relaxed a little, so now I'm going to pull my girth up one more hole, just one hole at a time. When I've reached the height of the girth that I want, and ideally, when BJ is about ready to be ridden, I can go up one more hole, which ideally I want to be at, because I would like the buckles to be in the middle holes of the billets. I don't want the buckles all the way on the top for a couple of reasons. Number one, it's going to rub my upper thigh and going to interfere with my leg contact. And I don't want the buckles up in the top hole, because what if my horse should lose some weight, or if my girth is actually a little bit loose, I don't have anywhere to go. So I want my buckles to be in the middle ranges of the billets. I don't want them to be on the bottom hole, because getting it buckled tight enough into that bottom hole can be very, very difficult to get the buckle to reach the billet. And should my horse gain a little bit of weight, which BJ's tending to do, I want to be able to use my girth. So somehow I want that buckle to be kind of in the middle. So let's try one more. Good boy. Oh. Okay, so now we're in the third hole. That puts us in the middle range. This is called a buckle guard, or a billet guard, and its purpose is to go down over the buckles of the girth to prevent the buckles from rubbing on the saddle flap. These are often removable and easily and cheaply replaced, so that if you should have your saddle long enough to wear a hole through the buckle guard, you can simply get a new pair of buckle guards rather than eat through the hole of your saddle. So use your buckle guards. If your saddle does not have buckle guards, get a pair. Now we'll move on to putting on the bridle. You can see we're on the cross tie, and the first thing that I want to do is to remove the cross ties. And when I remove that, before I remove that second one, I want to be sure to have my reins over the head. Now the reins should go just behind the ears, so that should he decide to move, I can grab the reins and I can move his head to a place that I want him to be. If I put the reins all the way to the neck and he should move and I grab the reins, I'm down here at the neck and I can't control his head. So I want the reins to slip just behind his ears. Then I remove the halter and hang it. When I hang the halter, I want to be sure that the halter isn't dropped on the ground where he could put a foot through it. And I want to be sure that when I hang my halter, that I want it free. I don't want it attached to either a lead rope that's tied to a horse trailer or to the cross tie, because should something happen and he get a foot in that halter and it's attached to a lead rope, that could be a very dangerous situation. I have seen horses, especially horses at trailer side, where someone has left the halter attached to the lead rope tied to the trailer. The halter has fallen on the ground, the rider is untacking, the horse moves around, puts a foot through the halter and gets caught, and that's a very dangerous situation. So please, hang your halter unattached, or if it's still attached to the lead rope, be sure that the lead rope is not tied to a stationary object like the horse trailer or a cross tie. Okay. Again, we start with a clean, come here, a clean bridle, very clean bridle, and always, always, wait, always a clean bit. Okay, never put a dirty bit in your horse's mouth. Okay, I got a hold of his nose. That gives me a little bit of leverage and a little bit of control. My right hand goes between his ears, reaches for the crown piece of the bridle. My left hand then takes a hold of the bit in my hands, and sometimes with my thumb, I'll pop my thumb into the space where there are no teeth. Where there are no teeth, I'll say that again, and ask him to open his mouth. Open your mouth. Good boy. Slip the bit in. Then gently take the ears forward. Clear the hair from under the bridle. Now I'm going to do my noseband. This is a figure-8 noseband, primarily used for eventers or sometimes jumpers. No, no, no. Stay where we are. Good boy. Very. Okay. And my noseband, I want it snug but not tight. The purpose of the figure-8 noseband is to create pressure on the top of the nose and to create 2 other pressure points down at the branches of the jaw and then in the chin groove to encourage the horse to keep his jaw straight, to not open his mouth, not cross his jaw. It helps keep the bit in place. It has a nice clean, furry, fuzzy fleece on the front of it. And then I want to attach the lower piece. I'm going to use both the keeper, which is the stationary loop that the extra leather goes through, and the runner, which is the movable piece of leather. Okay, now you'll notice that the pieces of the figure-8, it goes over kind of on a high spot over the projecting cheekbones. We want to be sure that it does not rub the projecting cheekbone. And it's high enough so that the lower branch of this noseband is completely clear of the air passage and that soft part of his nasal passageway here. If it were too low, it might press on the nasal passageway. And just like if you lightly press your nose, you can feel that that pressure inhibits the airflow. Well, you don't want to do that to your horse, so make sure that the airway is always clear, no matter what kind of noseband you may use. Next piece I'm going to attach is the throat latch. Purpose of the throat latch is should somehow you end up pulling on your bridle, which it can happen, that the bridle actually stays on the horse. So in order for that to be functional, I need to be sure that my throat latch is snug enough to do that job, but not so snug to block the airway. Now I'll go through the keeper and then the movable runner, tucking the ends in so it's all tidy. Now I check that by, I want to put 4 fingers under the throat latch so that when the throat latch comes into play under the jaw, there's enough room. I can also check that by flexing, if he'll flex. Would you flex, BJ? Okay, and when he's flexed correctly, that throat latch should still be relaxed and movable, and indeed it is. Good boy, thank you. Good boy. Okay. Now, you might ask, when might you be in the situation where your hand would be pulling on the crown piece of the bridle? Well, perhaps if you're eventing and you have a fall into in the fence, either at a water fence, and you're trying desperately to push yourself back up your horse's neck, and you don't make it, you might grab that bridle and you might be sitting in the water jump holding the bridle as your horse gallops back to the barn. And this sounds like a vivid story because indeed it happened to me on my very first combined training event many years ago. So make sure that your throat latch works properly. Then we'll take the reins over the head and I'll reach for my helmet. And now that I have my approved helmet, I'm ready to put my helmet on before I mount up and go on my ride. And that's how to tack up your horse. Now, how to untack your horse. Put the helmet back. We put the reins over the horse's head. Again, put them just behind the ears. I'm going to get the halter so that I'm ready for it. Undo the throat latch. Undo the nose band. And if it's a flash or figure eight, that's a 2 unbuckling process. Grab the reins behind his ears right at the throat latch. Gently slip the bridle off. Put the halter back on. You're ready for that. That was an easy day's work. Attach the halter. Wait. Now I have my cross tie. I can attach one side. Then we undo the saddle. First, I'm going to undo the near side or the left side. Undo the girth from the off side. Undo the saddle pad tabs. And slide both off. I want to add also, after your horse is untacked, completely, thoroughly groom him. You might need to wait for the sweat marks to dry and then thoroughly brush them out, or you may need to sponge them off and let that wet sponged area dry and thoroughly brush it completely clear. Or if there's a lot of sweat, you might want to hose him off and give him a little shower. But not only the saddle area, but also tend to the bridle area, especially behind the ears, under the throat latch, at the nose, and under the chin groove where the throat latch attaches. Be sure to keep your horse meticulously clean and happy. And that has been how to tack up and untack your horse for riding. Thank you for joining us at allhorsetalk.com. And again, I'm your host, Alita Bunny Hendricks. And until next time, remember, be good to your horse and be good to yourself. Bye-bye.